Hey, welcome to the 167. This week we're talking commitment with Pastor Cam Lazier. Welcome to the 167. Hey, welcome back to the 167, or maybe just welcome for your very first time trying us out. Thanks for being here. Make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, you like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe. And if you're listening to us on anything else, you probably have a Droid phone, and I can't text you.
Loser. I'm playing you're not
We
loser.
can't be in a group text. With me here today is the Cameron Lazier.
What's up? How y'all doing?
And so, Cam, you got to bring the message this week.
I did.
It was awesome.
Thank you so much. I was like, oh my gosh, this is 3 instead of 1 service, 1 message.
I know. It was terrible. At the beginning of the year, there was a series that Cam and I preached together, and one of us was going to have to take National Youth Pastor Sunday, where it's just
That
one.
was not that bad, but yeah, the one was amazing.
Yeah, just preach one service. That was all.
The entire time I was talking, I had to make sure I didn't say tonight, which I think I did in 1 service, and then make sure I didn't say collection instead of series, just because I'm just used to it Wednesday night. Which also goes to fun fact, if anyone's watching, every single time when I do welcome and announcements, I'm always terrified. I say, hey, welcome New Life Youth. Sunday morning.
There's 3 things I want to tell you.
So, yeah.
That's good. Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. We were talking about commitment because we're talking about Into the Wild, about how Christianity is not just some mundane thing. It's not the, just plain cheese pizza. It's pretty wild.
I like cheese pizza.
Dang it. I knew as soon as I said that you were going to be a cheese pizza person.
That's my jam. Don't put the veggies on it. Like, people get the veggie pizzas because they think, because I don't eat meat. I'm like, nah, it's give me a straight cheese in case it's pizza.
Yeah, I would see that. Like I said, if I didn't like meat, I'd probably eat more cheese pizza.
Yeah. Because you put the veggies on it, and then sometimes it smells. But anyway, we digress.
We digress.
We can talk about
All
this
right.
the whole episode.
So let me just ask you, I'll start off. We were talking about commitment. You were talking about the disciples when Jesus called them, where he comes up to them, they're fishing, and he's like, hey, come follow me. What do you think that actually was like? Like when that went down and Jesus is coming up and he's like, hey, psst, hey, just come here. Like, come here, buddy. Like, I've got candy and a puppy. Like, like, what do you think that was actually like for them?
He's like,
like
you. Come here.
That guy's staring at me.
Yeah, is he like staring at them as he's walking down the sea again? Like, who, me? I mean, interestingly enough, like, I'm always thinking, like, why those two? Like, even while those 4, I'm sure there's tons of fishermen there in that moment, but like, he picked those 2, and obviously for reasons we see later on about what they did for God in the kingdom and what they did for the church. But yeah, I don't know. I think it probably was super, weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I said this in a message of like, us, like, are you sure me and him, like, you don't want them, you want us? And so I would have been nervous if I was Peter or Andrew, of like, oh, this dude, this guy's coming up and like, what do we do? And it's like, come follow me. And it's like, well, like we mentioned offline, like Peter has a wife. Yeah. So it's like, well, I got to go talk to my
Like, I never think about that until you read that story where it's like, and Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. She had a fever. I'm like, wait, mother-in-law? He's got a what? What the? Like, what? My wife would not be supportive of this.
No.
I would like to quit my business and follow this dude around.
This would be a total, like, Cam moment because, like, fun fact with Casey and I's marriage, every single time if we go do something and Casey leaves, something crazy happens to me. Then when Casey comes back, I'm like, guess what just happened? This would be one of the moments where I come home and I'm like, I'm leaving. Jesus told me to follow him, and so I gotta go.
She's like, what did you do, Cam? There was literally one night that I went and woke Carissa up because downstairs I thought that our cat Grayson was chasing a mouse, and it turned out to be a spider. Oh. It was that big, and I went. Gosh. It was like at 11 o'clock at night, and I went and I woke Carissa up. I was like, "You're gonna have to come downstairs because if I tell you this story tomorrow, you're not gonna believe me." She was like, "What did you do?"
What's happening? So that's why I think, it was like, I think it was kind of like, oh, what's going on? And my question is, did anyone else hear this conversation? Was it like with other fishermen, like, oh, jealous? Like, it's not fair.
Wait, what?
They don't even go here.
Dude, if I were you, I wouldn't go. Yeah. What are you doing? Hey, can you pick up my nets for me?
Yeah. What? The boat's is drifting off.
Well, I mean, I would love to know the decision-making process in that because there's some of it where I'm going, did they do those incredible things for God because it was Peter, or could Jesus have just chosen any two random dudes and it would have worked out the same way because it's Jesus and he's training them? Or was it like, well, I want people that, you know, that they're going to do great things for God, but also we need to get fed. So I'm going to get these fishermen who are adding that skill to the roster. You know, I'm like, I think it would be fascinating to find out the decision-making process on that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I also wanted to personalize that and ask, was there a time for you where you were called out like that? Like you were invited into something, somebody said, hey, I see something in you. I think that you should come and either be on the team, follow me, whatever it was. What was that like?
Yeah, so even thinking about that, going into my 10th grade year of high school, like I didn't play football like my entire life. I started in high school. And so I remember we were hanging out with some friends in front of my friends, one of my friends' front yard, and we were playing, you know, mystery box with the football, throwing the football up, and it was pretty much just like you catch the ball, and then you run around. We were just playing like pretty much backyard football, but not really, and we was tackling people. And so my friend Micah, he was trying out for the football team at his high school. We went to different high schools, and so even during that time, we were just playing. I'm tackling people, and they're like, "Oh," or catching balls, tackling people, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you should go try out for the football team. Like, you'd be a great tight end." And I'm like, I don't really know anything really about football. Like, I watched it a little bit growing up.
What did you say about my tight end?
I was like, what? I was like, okay, cool. So he's like, yeah, we should try out the football team together. Like, I'm gonna try out for my school. You try out for your school. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, literally, that was on a Saturday night. Monday morning came. I went, tried to figure everything out. Got signed up to go to the football team. Came on out, and I was like, hey, I want to sign up I'm gonna be a tight end. And they're like, no, you're gonna be a receiver. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know what that means, but really just stepping into that commitment of like the grind every single day, every single week, every single year that I played football. That started with that, just my friends going, hey, why do you just want to, like, you should try out for the football team. And then just seeing just me being committed to it. And as hard as it got during the seasons, as hard as it got during the off season, I could have easily just quit because this was based off of my friend just saying, hey, you should try it out. But me actually falling in love with it and being committed to the workouts and being committed to learning plays and watching film and doing all that stuff, like that came from just that basic, easy, just like invitation of just do it and to see what happens. And so, yeah, that's kind of for me.
When you look at that now, though, in those different seasons that like I'm just starting this versus I'm in love with it fully, right?
Yeah.
What kind of kept you coming back this second and third practice?
Yeah, honestly, just the drive for me to get better. I remember literally the first practice coming in, and you know it's hot and we're just running. They're like, okay, we're gonna talk about installs, and they're showing like the X's and O's, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and they expect you to like come in and know everything, and so we were doing practice, and I was doing receiver stuff practice, and I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. I can catch a ball kind of, and I kind of got beat up that first practice, and so I went home and I was like, I don't know, like, and my mom kind of just had to really just, you know, encourage me and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's try something else the next day. And so I started again doing receiver, and then the coach said, hey, you know what? You should go to defensive back and play defense. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I literally remember doing defensive back and literally not knowing anything about football, and had an afro at the time. And one of the kids go, hey, how many picks you got? Because like you play defense. I was like, yes, sir. How many picks you got? And I was like, oh, I have like 6. I got 6 or 7. I got a purple one. I got a purple one. I got a yellow, and they're looking at me like, huh? And I was like, oh, okay. So this is what I'm talking about.
Sports terminology.
Yeah. So, and I learned that, but in that time, I think what really helped me, because even in that moment, I was embarrassed because I don't like not knowing things. But our coach, Coach Bubba, was our DB coach at Bloomingdale High School. Shout out to Coach Bubba wherever you're at.
Shout out.
Hey, Coach Bubba, we love you. And he took the time to understand. Like, I think he understood that I had no clue about context of football. Didn't know how to really the motions, the movements, all that stuff. So he actually, while we were doing individual drills, and every time like during practice, he would sit me down and he'd be like, hey, I'm gonna teach you how to backpedal. I'm gonna teach you the basics. I want you to watch. I don't want you to go in right now during practice. I want you to just shadow and do mental reps and like stand in the back and kind of like hang out and watch what everyone else is doing. And he really took the time to really like mold me into just a basic football player, a basic defensive back. And then that kind of grew from there. And once I got that confidence from like that first practice, I came back to the next one, and I came back to the next one, and he would slowly build up on me. So then when we hit off seasons, or even when I switched schools, we had like very tough coaches. especially during the off season of the summer. And so I think if I didn't have that coach that really guided me, I would have left during the hard seasons because they were pushing us like crazy. But it was because of the fundamentals I got some confidence. I was able to go, okay, I can actually do this. And like the little subtle, like, hey, good job, Cam, good job, blah, blah, blah. That really just helped motivate me to continue to come on. And so continue with the commitment that I had. And so that's.
No, I think that's perfect because it's like, when we're asking like, what's that like for them? I mean, really, you see the disciples, like we have all this context after the fact. Like now you're looking at that and you're going, oh, how ridiculous. They're asking me about my picks. And I'm like, but at the time that made complete sense to you.
Yeah.
And so like we watch the disciples where Jesus is like, yeah, I'm going to die and resurrect. And they're like, what? like they have no context. They're not rabbinical students. They're not, anything. And, Jesus is trying to teach them this whole new way of living. And it's like, I'm sure that would be crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I still sit in the office and you guys are like, oh, did you hear about, and then you name somebody by name and it's like a coach of a college team. And I'm looking at you guys going, this is some thing I don't understand.
I don't know. I'm just going to be quiet and just listen.
I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. I think I heard that in Sport Clips.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I saw it on the thing. But I mean, I think for the disciples, I think that was very helpful for them because there's moments through the Gospels where Jesus they do like little tiny steps. And then I think it grows to the moment to where, I mean, obviously when Jesus gets arrested, they all like scatter, but because they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But there's little moments leading up to it where there's like the faith, the encouragement. Hey, you guys can do this. It's good. The feeding of the 5,000, we talked about that in our leadership thing. And it's like, well, Jesus, what do we do? And he's like, well, you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me do it real quick, and then let me show you what else you can do.
Right.
And I think that kind of motivated him. Like, yeah, we can do ministry, we can do this other stuff because the encouragement, the motivation.
Absolutely. But you also have those tough coaching conversations where he, tells the people they come back the next day and he says, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And they're like, what? And he looks at the disciples and goes, you going to leave too?
Yeah.
You going to quit?
And I think if they didn't have that context with Jesus beforehand, they would have been like, huh? Like, I think if Jesus would have came to Peter and all them and said, eat my flesh and drink my blood, they would have been like, no, like in the beginning.
And again, it's the same thing. If your coach came to you day 2, you should quit. Okay, I'll quit.
Yeah.
But like 6 months and you're like, what are you going to quit? No, I'm not going to quit. Like it's a motivational thing. So in your sermon, you talked about why do you think, or I was going to ask you, why do you think? Because you said that what happens is you lose focus on Jesus.
Yeah.
Like to stay in this commitment to Jesus, we have to focus on Jesus. Why do you think that people are losing focus on Jesus? Like, what are the major temptations that you see Christians like just lose focus?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes through like culture, especially nowadays, because we live in this distracted culture where it's like you go through your phone and you're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, and then like you want that refresh. I've already seen this, and so you're constantly going back in because you want the new update, the new post. Like I even find myself at if I'm up past 10:30. I'm like scrolling through social media. I'm like, what else is coming in? I'm like, everyone's asleep. No one's posting anything. Yeah. Everyone's asleep. Turn your phone off and go to sleep. So I think that has kind of helped with that and like hurt our focus. But everyone wants the new thing. Everyone wants the shiny new object. Everyone wants that status, that cloud, or whatever it is. And so everyone is looking for. That's kind of just that's making people lose their focus for that. I think also just we can be selfish. And I think we can go, okay, well, I'm going to have my focus on Jesus. Okay, but now I'm in the season of my life where I need to focus on this thing. I have a family now, or I have this new job. I have this new promotion or whatever it is. And so like, okay, I'm going to now focus on that because that is a lot. That it's a new responsibility. It's a bigger weight. So let me focus on that. Oh, now I'm focusing on my family that I just created. Okay, now my time with Jesus has now drifted away. Or now I got this new job, this new promotion. Oh, it's great. I'm making more money. It's awesome. Oh, I've just now realized I haven't spent time with God in a while. I haven't gone to church because of X, Y, Z. And I think it could be, super one side, but I think it could be super subtle in that we lose our focus slowly and we don't realize it until it's too late. I've even had conversations with people where it's like they just stop going to church because they miss 1 week because they're sick, or they miss 1 week because one subtle thing in their life, or we had a family engagement. Okay, cool. Oh, the next week, well, this is going on. Okay, the next week, oh, this is happening. And then next thing you know, they haven't been to church in 2 months.
Well, it's embarrassing. They're like, well, I can't go back now.
Exactly. And we even do that in our youth ministry. There's so many students that like, they stop coming. And then when I see them at the wall, they're like, well, like you said, it's embarrassing. I don't want people to judge me because I've come back. And I'm like, no, just come back.
Honestly, there are people in my life that I scroll through my phone and I realize that they ghost me, and I'm like, and I'll just text them and be like, hey man, thinking about you. like as a I'm opening this door back to you because I know you're probably in this thing of going, oh, I never texted him back for 2 months. You know, I'm like going, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, like, but here, I wanted to get your take on this because I think that there's something here when it comes to focus, and you were talking about the attitudes. I think there's this different generational focus, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I was talking to Carissa. We go on these walks now at night on the bike path, and it's really funny because I'm watching the way that different generations experience music. And so, you know, before it was like you had to have a record player and it was this huge hi-fi, you know, thing. And it was like the whole house is listening to a record, right? And then it was my generation, you got Walkmans. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can listen to whatever I want. I don't have to okay it by anybody. I can be in my own world and put in my headphones and just do whatever. And then so there was this whole generation of we have to make better and better and better headphones, ISO headphones. And now though, a lot of times we're on the bike path and people are walking by with pills or, you know, like the Beats pills or like any, like a speaker, and they're just broadcasting their music. And I'm like, I was sitting there going, man, I really feel like that's a generational thing where it was like, it became this very introverted private thing. And now it's like, I'm listening to this, therefore you are listening to this. And I'm like, I feel like that's the way a lot of like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are looking at it now too, where it's just like, I am this way, and it's not enough for you to just be like, okay, whatever. Like, and it's like, no, you're gonna like. It goes to the affirmation thing. It's like I'm having an experience, so everybody has to validate that experience or experience with me, and so I just look at that as like the focus thing of going. I'm looking at these different generations and going, you know, the focus went from hey, we're a family to I'm my own individual person to now it's like. Now my major focus is I'm on social media, and so whatever if I'm eating food, you need to know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that like at the beach because usually like when I was in Florida, we always bring a speaker, and it's always like even Casey now when we go to the beach, he's like turn the music down, like people can hear it. And I'm like I want them to hear it. I want them to. But for me, I want the affirmation of like, dang, that's a good song. Like I like that music, but I'm like I'll play it, and everyone better hear what I'm listening to. If you don't like it, turn your music up. Like so. But
I just think that's, you know, and that's the thing where I'm going, what is that focus? Is it like, you know, that it's like, yeah, I want the validation. I want or is it evangelistic? I want other people I have a new artist and I want other people to experience it. But I think right now, what we're seeing is a generation on social media that they're so focused on their own experience, but also simultaneously wanting other people to see what they're going through, but they're not actually just like sitting down with somebody and talking. And so I think that's a hard thing to help somebody experience Jesus that way is to say like, hey, what are you actually hearing from God? But also what is it that you want to bring us along in that experience? I think that's a really, really tough barrier to stay focused on Jesus without shifting the focus to also almost like the Pharisee who's praying out in the synagogue. He's like, oh, Lord Father, you know, it's just like, listen, are you focused on Jesus or are you focused on showing other people what you are experiencing with God? And like, how does that work together?
Yeah. And you see that a lot. This like people sharing reels and all that stuff. I think there's one thing to share, just like a Christian reel that you see and, oh, here's a Bible verse, blah, blah, stuff. But I think it's like, I appreciate it to myself in my own sense of like when people share those raw posts where it's like, hey, here's what's going on in my life, can you pray for me? And like on the story, and it's like, oh dang, like they're actually real enough to be like, hey, yeah, this is more than just a Bible verse, this is more than just a QT reel, like this is like, hey, I'm struggling, can you pray for me, whatever it is, and I'm just posting on my story, here's what God's doing in my life. Even the fact of some people will share like their scripture reading time. Here's what I learned with that. I think that's really cool. But I didn't even think about that when you said the evangelistic thing of like, I'm sharing this so that you can experience Jesus in that sense. I'm just going to share what I know, share what I have, and you can ask questions. Hey, what are you sharing? What are you posting about? And so I like that.
Like there's an authenticity and an evangelistic piece versus the validation piece of, you know, I want you to experience this so that you can go, you're cool. Not, hey, what do you, you know, oh, is that Jesus that I see in your life? Jesus is pretty cool versus like, oh, you're so cool because you posted a Bible verse.
And honestly, and you can, if you've been around long enough, you can tell who's doing that.
Oh yeah. There's this, everybody's like, oh, they're faking. I'm like, yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, you can tell. It's pretty obvious.
So when we're talking about being committed to Jesus, I'm going to use scare quotes under really instead of committed.
Committed.
So
No.
if you're really committed to Jesus, what does that look like? You know, because we're talking about staying focused and doing it. So if I'm really committed to Jesus, what does that look like in my daily life? Do I have to get up 2 hours early and, you know, exercise and, you know, pray for an hour and a half? And what am I doing if I'm really committed to Jesus?
I think like the main thing, if you're really committed to Jesus, and like you sent me this questions earlier, and then I wore the shirt, but and it kind of connected.
It says obey for those of you listening on the podcast.
Obedience, really. I think if you're really committed to Jesus, I think if you're really committed to following him, it's seen in your obedience. I think it's seen in Jesus asking you, the Holy Spirit convicting you to do something, and then you do it. And obviously sometimes it comes with hesitation, but then you ultimately do it. And I think that's like a telltale sign of somebody that's really truly being committed to Jesus, to following him, of like, hey, you know what, I'm just going to be obedient to what God is asking me, where God is leading me to, whatever it is. Because if we're not, that just shows that we're not really committed, because we're still wanting to do our own thing and what's going to please us, but it's focused on that. And so, yeah, it could be just going to church all the time, but there's so many people that just go to church just to check it off the box, and they're not really committed to Jesus. They're just committed to showing up to a spot and just doing whatever, like just doing the normal routine. But
I'm committed to CAM. I'm committed to youth.
Yeah.
I'm committed to New Life. I'm committed to pastorate. Like, or are you committed to Jesus?
Exactly. So
well,
that's what I think.
Walk me through that just a little bit, because I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think it is obedience when, like you said, when I get convicted by the Holy Spirit. I'm also always on this kick where I'm like, explain it to me like I'm 3. Like, I have to explain this to like my daughter. So what does that feel like? Like, especially for our listeners where they're having an experience where it's like, no, that's just my thought. That's like, what does that feel like to receive conviction from the Holy Spirit and then do something about it?
Yeah, I think really that conviction for me, it's like that feeling that you can't shake. That feeling that we're like, okay, it just keeps popping back up for some reason. And even if you try to shove it away, you're like, okay, this keeps coming back up. Or if it's like a random thought that like you would never really think. I mean, I think we've talked about this on the podcast.
And it's not like my reoccurring feeling about ice cream, where I'm like, oh, this feels really good. Oh, I just want to have this feeling all the time. It's popping up because it feels anxious. It feels dirty. It feels bad.
Yeah. Or it feels like there's something I really feel like I need to do. And yeah, it's giving me anxiety, the fact that I'm not really doing it, and I know when I do it, things are going to get better, and it's stressing me out of like, I know I need to do this, I know I need to talk to that person, I know I need to go send this out or go over here, but like and even there's fear with that, you know, thinking through just even times in the Bible where God is calling, you know, I'm sure when God was telling Abraham to go up to the mountain to sacrifice his son, he's like, like the entire time, just like stressed out. I'm like,
oh my God, go get that wood.
Where's the sacrifice?
Why, Dad?
So, I think it's that that feeling of that, and then that once you do whatever God is calling you to do, that in that immense like, okay, I did it, cool, like that sigh of relief, that feeling of like, you know, good job.
Yeah.
Good job that you did that. I mean, I've had moments like that, even when it's, you know, even if it's not simply for some people, but even going up to preach a message or going up to do a ministry moment or whatever. And I had this thing of like, I need to say this. This is what I'm going to say. It's my plan. And I'm going up and God's like, nope, you need to say this, or you need to go this direction. You need to go that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't plan on that. It's weird. I didn't know. And I didn't expect that to happen, but it did. Or, hey, we need to shift this over here. Okay, cool. Or we need to go this direction as a family. We need to not do this decision. We do that decision. And it's like, no, it's just continually. And then even that conviction of, especially like if you're married, of having a conversation with your spouse and seeing what they think. And and Casey and I have had those conversations where like, I can't shake it. So then I talk to her about it, and she's like, you know what? I've had the same feeling as well. And I'm like, oh, there you go.
I always say that same thing about like when I do, I call it cold calling, but like, you know, I'll have like a list of people, like new people at New Life that I got to call or talk to or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, you just sit there and you put it off, and you're like, I need to call this person. I really do. It's uncomfortable to call somebody and you don't know what they're going to say. And then once you like get in the zone, you're like, you know, like, and you pick up the phone and you just dial the number and you're just like, hey, this is Pastor Lucas, you know, like, and then it's like, and they're like, I was so hoping that you'd call. And it's like, oh, that went really well. Yeah. And then it gives you the confidence. You kind of get, you just go, I'm just going to get through this as fast. You just keep going. And, you know, those are those moments where you're just like, oh, once I actually get into it, like I know how to do this. I know how to navigate it. It feels really good. But I almost feel like it's that I told Carissa this after the sermon, so this is gonna be good. You can write this down.
Right.
But we were at the pool with the kids, and I said it's always the coldest, like right where the water hits you.
Yeah.
It's like if you just jump in the water and you're waist deep, your toes don't feel cold. It's right at that line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was reflecting on that after your sermon. And it's like, I think commitment's like that, where I'm just like, it's where you're the least committed. Like it's right on the borderline that's uncomfortable. And it's like, if you just commit and you're underwater, it feels really good.
Yeah.
And if you're out of it, you're like, it's hot or like, but it's like, it's always at that line where I'm hesitating.
Mm-hmm.
It's always at the line where God's calling me into something and I go, I don't know about that God. That's where it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is right at that line.
And then you get that one person that's in the water and they splash and you're like, stop.
Yeah, you're like, yeah,
I hate you.
Yeah. But that's how commitment feels. It's like, you're like, I don't, like, this part of my life is really committed to the Lord and I really like that and I serve and it's really great and I feel good. And it's like, well, what about this part of your life? No.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And then if you get splashed with a little Jesus on it, it's like, it burns us. Like, and then it's like, and it's right at that line where you're like, oh, okay, like I feel convicted. And then you go a little deeper and you're like, well, that part feels really good now. Yeah. And now I'm convicted up here. And you're like, so the moral of the story is you should just jump all the way
Go all the way in into the pool.
So we only have a couple minutes left, but let me ask you, so times in our lives where we have to keep walking, like that was, you're saying like, you just got to keep going, keep sinking deeper, whatever it is. What was maybe one thing that helps you do that when you're in a season where you're like, I just got to keep walking? What's one thing that's really practical that helps you?
Yeah, what helps me is just hearing stories and just seeing development and growth. I think there's so many things I can talk about that helped me keep walking. I know we talked about sports and football earlier in this conversation, and just how looking back at even 2 seasons, I'm like, okay, this is what kept me walking. I can think through, I lift weights all the time, and so looking at my growth and tracking, the weights I'm lifting, I'm like, okay, like I'm seeing growth in that. That's keeping me walking. I think, like personally for me, even right now, it's like in ministry, because I mean, you've been doing ministry for a while, like a long time, and so
that was an old joke. Thanks.
It was an old joke. I'm sorry, but no, just in that mentorship, because I talked to you about a lot of ministry stuff, because your experience can bring you into a lot of things, because you have a lot of experience in that, and so I think, and so you understand like how hard ministry is, but I think it's those stories that keep you going. The stories of, especially like youth ministry, the stories of hearing, a generation, a family started to be saved from a student that has, like, their whole family does not follow Jesus, but they do, and they're radically serving Jesus and they're sharing Jesus with their family. Like, that's an incredible story. Or kids that are serving or whatever it is. Like, just hearing those stories, hearing those moments, hearing just even that one kid that got saved on that Wednesday night or whatever it is, or at camp, has radical, God moment. Those keep me going, and just hearing stories and seeing where we were at before and where we're at now. That just keeps me walking, because it's going to be a hard walk. It's going to be tiresome at times, uncomfortable. But when you look back, when you collect stories, when you collect whatever it is, it just motivates you to keep going for me. And so that's,
to stick with the football analogy, it's almost like getting a first down.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not at the goal yet, but it's like, oh, good, I get a restart. It refreshes the clock.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, good, I get 4 more downs.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And I can play those downs, and then that kid gets saved, and I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm back in.
Which is good, because I think so many times we try to go for like the bomb deep. We just need the touchdown. You need 40 yards, 50 yards, and one, like, no, just keep going down the field, slowly doing it, looking back at like, okay, we started at the 20, and now like our 20, now we're in their 20. And so like we went the field, we went the course, and so keep on going to get the touchdown. And so
well, I think you mentioned, and like I said, my thing, you mentioned it, which is mentorship. Like, if I have mentors in my life and I'm mentoring somebody else, it keeps me motivated to stay learning, so I can actually teach something to somebody. Yeah. But also, I need somebody in my life to teach me. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Join us next time here on the 167. We'll see you next week. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.